Great people. Okay. I call this meeting to order at 6:04 p.m. Jay said that he would be late to this meeting, and then Matthew sent his regrets. On to the territorial acknowledgement. The Board of Directors acknowledges that the University of Waterloo is on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. Our organization operates on the Podwin Tract, land promised to the Six Nations, which includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. The agenda has been distributed to you all beforehand. Are there any changes that need to be made or comments that you would like to have with regards to the agenda? Anything? It will stand approved as distributed. Would anyone like to declare a conflict of interest at this time? Not seeing anything. The minutes have been distributed to everyone beforehand. Are there any comments, concerns, or amendments to the minutes that we would like to bring up? Seeing anything, the minutes stand approved as distributed. Last thing, for the chairs of the committees that have already been approved by the committees themselves, they also need to be approved by board. I don't think this is going to be very contentious. So are there any comments or concerns with regards to these chairs? Not seeing anything, that the chairs will stand approved as distributed. Okay, moving on now to 2.1 on the agenda, the presentations. Sandra and Esther are going to give a quick presentation to the board.
Good evening, everyone. The presentation we have this evening is on effective board and committee meetings. And we thought it was important to talk again because this was kind of touched during the retreats or the transition that we had for the board. Or thought it was necessary to also emphasize a few things again based on the way the meetings have been going. So why it's important to have effective meetings is it helps ensure that the meetings are focused on governance and strategic decision making. So we're not discussing having conversations that really would not be of any use to the board. And then it also helps with time management, ensure that, because as students, we understand that you're students, you have commitments to your education, to the societies you belong to, and even personal commitments as well. So it's always best to ensure that the meetings are run in a way that's efficient and also manages your time, and then enhances transparency, accountability, and overall organizational performance, and contributes to positive relationship amongst board members, staff, and stakeholders.
And I are kind of tag teaming this presentation. So the next are for me. Running the meeting is one thing. Preparing for the meeting is quite the other piece. And in order to have an effective meeting, you need to have an appropriate structure and preparation done. And there's preparation that's required for both the directors themselves as you're getting ready for the meeting, as well as staff and the presidents and putting the agenda together. You want to make sure that you're structuring your meeting in a way that it's allowing you to have the most strategic discussions that you need to have. That's the highest accountability that you have as a board. Yet there are some things that are kind of routine, and we'll talk a little bit about a structure for your agendas that are necessary for a board to be approving because you have the oversight for the organization. It's important also that agenda items come in advance to the meeting, and you're getting pretty good about doing that. Bringing things at the last minute isn't fair to anybody. It doesn't let you understand what the topic is that you're going to be discussing and properly prepare any questions. Now, that doesn't mean that sometimes there could be things because urgent pieces have come up. And I think back to one of the first meetings I was with you, and it was the day of the tragedy on campus. Having a conversation about that in the moment was appropriate to have. It's something you needed to deal with. You had a student body that you needed to be getting some kind of communication out. So those things are going to happen from time to time, and you need to be able to adjust your agenda as it's going. But getting into a regular habit of papers coming the day of, I think the regular habit, if that's the case, you get into is, all right, the paper comes, but it's not discussed at the meeting because you really can't prepare for it properly. And as directors, you want to make sure that you've reviewed all of the meetings ahead, and the way that you've got your you're calling them notice of motion. My language, I might interchange it with a briefing note. You are outlining what the title is, if there are any recommendations, and what the background information is. Some of the items you've been really good about putting lots of background information. Some I think you've been a little light. So just as a habit, you can start getting into doing that. It just helps everybody become prepared. It's really important to not schedule other activities during the meetings. You need to be present at the meeting. And it's challenging when you've got a hybrid meeting, because right now no screens are on. So to get that engagement, it's difficult. So if you can try not to do that. So those are just from a preparation standpoint. Get yourself ready for food. Get yourself all the things that you need to be effective at the meeting is good. In terms of some thoughts around at a high level how you might want to use your time in the meeting effectively. Look at items that you could have in a consent agenda. And typically the items for consent would be things like the minutes. So you group all of the minutes, you would group, and I would suggest even today, the appointments that you did of the committee chairs, they weren't contentious issues, they were kind of routine things to do. So you could list them under items for consent. And then when it comes to time at the meeting, the chair is just asking, are there any questions from the items for consent? If there aren't any questions, you are approving the entire items for consent, and they can include motions. It's all right to do that. If there is a question, you don't ask the question right away. You would say, I have a question about the minutes. And so the chair, Rory, would say, all right, we'll take that out of the items for consent. If it's the minutes, you'll probably deal with them right away. But if it were something that you had a bigger question, let's say it was a finance report that you'd included and somebody didn't understand how the finance report was put together, you may want to give a little bit more time on the agenda for that and find an appropriate spot for it to be. It is a good habit to get into opportunities for some generative discussion. So you can, if things that you don't get to a conclusion about, a little bit of a messy conversation. Typically what you've done is put your presentations into that kind of format. However, I challenge you to take a look at how you might be able to build the generative component in place. The next is to deal with the strategic kinds of issues, the things that are going to require discussion and decision and often recommendations, because that's a key responsibility that you have, followed by the fiduciary kinds of things, and then the confidential sessions that you have. And the confidential sessions, again, we may need to look at two types of confidential sessions that you have. One that you've got management or the staff in place, and another one that the board may just want to have an opportunity to say, hey, how did we do today? And it becomes part of the evaluation of what you're doing and an ongoing improvement. Another tactic around organizing your agenda and to keep your strategic plan first and foremost is to highlight the items according to your strategic plan. So start to put them in there, and then it just gives you another visual of how you can see how you're advancing. It also allows, as you're preparing the agenda, if it doesn't advance the strategic plan, you begin to question, is it something that should be on the board agenda? Back to you.
Yeah. Okay, so at the meeting, because what Sandra discussed was things, the preparations that need to happen before the meeting. So at the meeting, it's best to arrive early. Usually, Rory tends to give like 5 minutes grace for directors to come in. But it's better people arrive 5 minutes before the meeting as opposed to him having to extend the commencement period to like 5 minutes past 6, because that's been the trend, to be honest, for this term. We always start the meetings 6:05. So it's best to arrive like 5 minutes to the meeting, and then it's also good to follow the agenda sequence. That's been done. Generally, I'd say that there's been compliance with that, and then there are instances where you might need to move an agenda item probably up, or maybe move it as something that should be considered towards the end of the meeting. And for that motion to pass, you would need 2/3 majority votes to change the sequence of the agenda items. And then during the meetings, when you're having conversations, ensure that those conversations are respectful and focused on the agenda item that's being considered. So try to ensure that you're not digressing, and like we had mentioned earlier, time management is important, that you limit the conversations to what the agenda item is really all about, and not digressing into things that might not really concern that item. Then concerning when you're having conversations as well, it's important to praise or make positive comments publicly. And then if you have any criticism or feedback to provide, it's always best to have that during confidential session, whether it's or in respect of a staff or a particular director. If so long as that conversation is not something that might be seen as positive, it's always best to have those types of conversations in confidential sessions. And then try as much as possible to limit distractions like your phones, laptops. Again, especially for those that are online, it's something that happens to everyone. When you're not attending a meeting physically, it's very easy to get distracted. Even when you're attending physically, your mind could wander off at some point. How much more when you're like all alone and your cameras are not on and no one's watching you. So it's easy to respond to messages that come up on your phone or quickly check an email that pops up or something. And then even during the meetings, there are times when, especially those that are watching online, they send messages as opposed to probably raising their hands and allowing the chair to probably ask them to unmute, and then they contribute. Those kinds of things could be distracting, especially for the chair, because it could be overwhelming. It's already overwhelming chairing a meeting, not to now have to combine that with having to keep monitoring the chats to see those that are dropping messages. So it's always best, if you have any contributions to make, to raise your hands, and then the chair would acknowledge that, okay, someone would like to make a contribution, and then he would accord you the opportunity to speak, and then you speak. And then Sandra touched this point as well, the last point about avoiding surprises. If you have agenda items that you'd like to bring up, it's always best they come in within the stipulated timeline. And like she said, some urgent things might happen, but it doesn't mean it needs to be considered at that, or a decision needs to be made at that meeting too. You can mention it, but it might not be like a decision might not, so that you don't feel rushed. A decision might not be made at that meeting. And then when you're making decisions, it's always best to act in WUSA's best interest, because as students, we keep saying it, you're wearing different hats. You're the owners, you're also consumers of our services. You have obligations to your societies, you may or may not get. And then, so you're at that point, when you're in the boardroom and we're about to make decisions, it's always best to just wear the singular WUSA hat at that point and always think of what's best both in the long and the short term for the corporation. So you should be objective. And then when you feel like there's anything that requires professional assistance, it's always good to, at that point, ask that, is there any third party that we can probably get insight from before we make this decision? Always ask questions, and then, like I said, vote in the best interest of the corporation. So post meetings, what directors are required to do would be to notify the chair and secretary of proposed agenda item for the next meeting, and then review previous meeting documents, and then the supporting documents that have been shared up front for the next meeting. So if there are questions or comments.
We can pose a question. The question would be, and for those of you that are online, throw it into chat, and I'll get either Rory or Katie to monitor it. What 3 things have worked well with your meetings, and what 3 things would you like to see improved? We'll put the people that are in the room on the spot. to offer their contributions. You look like you're ready.
I'm still thinking about it. Three things that we've done well and three things that we can improve.
Mhm.
I think some of them have already been identified, but just like, for example, in the presentation, if we do our best, just come before the start time, so we're not delayed by a few minutes, would it be like a little bit nice? But also just, if I'm starting with improvements, maybe just talking about agenda items as well. I think a lot of the stuff that we could improve is kind of what's already in the presentation. Stuff that I think that we're good at. I know I only said 2
That's okay.
points.
It's okay.
Is I think that we're all very open to discussion, which is really nice. And that is really important part about getting stuff done. The second point after that would probably be there's a willingness to do what's best for the organization. And that's what I can think of right now. So,
Rory?
uh-oh.
Not to me, yeah.
Give me a minute. Deep thoughts.
Thinking. Yeah. I think, I guess, just looking at it from the perspective of chair, I think, again, as pointed out in the presentation, just those sort of things regarding making sure that motions aren't coming to board directly before the meeting. I think making sure that all things are distributed to all the directors so that they're able to read it and understand it beforehand. For though I know we all like to think of ourselves as great arbiters, it's often best when we have times to think about a problem and sort of digest it in our brain, so to speak. So those are probably the main 2 things I'd say need improvements. And then for things that I think we're already doing well, I agree with what Emma's been saying in the chat. Just I think we have really good conversation when it comes down to it. I think that making sure that those conversations are able to, continue is very good.
Anything else in the chat while you're there?
Since
I can't see it.
Yeah, Kevin also touched on the discussions and the wide range of views that are present at our meetings, which I agree with. And that's it.
That's it? Okay. Any other comments? Your turn.
Can do one. I like, I'm a fan of how, at least in this governance structure, I like how spread out the directors are on various topics. It seems like we've cast a really, really wide net, which is good through internal and also obviously external committees. I think something could be better and needs work is how to reel in that giant, massive net and turn discussions you're having and thoughts you're having into motions that line up and are strategic and generative. It's a big challenge.
I would agree from the observations that each of you have made. I think you do have, when you enable yourselves or allow yourselves to have discussion, you have great discussion. Last meeting was quite good. We put aside a little bit the actual motion, talked about an issue, and then made a decision on whether it was time to table the motion or not. And I think just even flipping some of those things around, it's not so much the motion that's important, it's the topic and making sure that there's agenda time with that. So a challenge I'll issue to really Esther and Rory and Katie as you're pulling the agenda together, think about it when you're organizing the items around the agenda. What is it that you really need to have some conversation about? What is it that's a little bit more routine, and can you start giving yourself a little bit more space to be able to have the conversation?
Just want to add potentially one from an improvement that I've seen from the outside looking in. Recognize I'm not a board member, so I appreciate everyone taking a moment to hear my thoughts, which would be engagement around all directors. That I've noticed that there's a handful of directors that will speak during meetings and others that are more passive in listening. And I'm not asking anybody to speak just for the sake of speaking, but having that experience and sitting on a couple different boards, I was lost when I joined WUSA board for the first time back a long time ago, and being like, I wasn't a governance person, I wasn't a bylaw person, I wasn't a reader. So I had a lot of questions about how things worked and what's the right process. And, you know, this piece that you've presented already is how does this tie to the strategic plan, or what's our purpose here? And I just encourage everyone to speak up if you have questions or aren't clear on what the role is or process, or even questions about the bylaws, that you're not supposed to know everything. This board was not recruited and hired based off individuals' expertise and past experience in sitting on other boards. And so it's okay to be a little bit vulnerable and not know the answers. And I encourage folks to speak up during meetings, before meetings, after meetings, and connect to say, how is this supposed to work? What's the right process? What do our bylaws say? I'm referring back to those pieces too. And you don't need to have the answers. Bring those good questions so that your competencies also grow, and you're not relying on your fellow board members that may have that, some of that experience. Grow your knowledge and grow those perspectives as well.
And that's a good point. And I noticed Jeff's hand was up, and we'll go back because he's probably got a question still. It's also creating the environment and the atmosphere and the code of conduct that you want to have among the board members. You're a team that's coming together. So how do you want to do things, and how do you want to make it happen? So Jeff go ahead, Jeff. Right?
Yeah, for sure. Just wanted to really echo Brian's points. I guess as someone who was also new to the board last year, I was sort of maybe in the same position where I was. Oh, sorry. Can you guys hear me?
Sure. Yep, we can hear you.
Where I was really unfamiliar with things, and I honestly did not really say too much in my first few months, but really just have an open mind, like take the opportunity to learn a lot. And yeah, I really love working with all of you, and you guys are going to do awesome.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Another coaching that I've been giving Rory is if there have been a few of you, maybe this is warning that I can give. If you haven't said anything in a meeting, I've encouraged him to at least reach out and say, hey, Suzanne, we haven't heard from you. Have you got anything you'd like to contribute? Not that you have to. Suzanne can still pass, but sometimes that invitation makes it a little bit speak up. So we encourage you to do that, don't we, sir? So if there aren't any other questions, Rory, I think we're finished with that part of the agenda.
Okay. Good. So moving on to 3.1, unfinished business, updates on communication between the student governance and the at-large body. I don't believe there are any updates. Suzanne, do you have any updates?
Communication plan is linked to.
Right.
So that was the agenda.
It was in the executive. Okay. Everyone had the chance to read the presentation then?
Yes.
Steps. Look at it in James real quick. Communications team and things, but budget.
Okay. So given the fact that this was included in the executive director's report, maybe we'll just sort of group these all together into just general questions we have for the report and also for this item. Is that okay?
I don't think it's part of the report. This, because it's related to this is entirely focused on this agenda item. So that's why it's on your, so this is like an update on communications.
Okay.
So I think
yes, I see it.
right.
last meeting, I sort of indicated that Melissa had said that they had a draft communication plan and she was working through the last thing. So this is the draft. This is a communication plan that, yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
So then I know Melissa sadly can't be at this meeting today. Is this something that you are wanting?
Yeah.
I know we talked about this earlier, that if directors had any questions, we could. Sadly, Melissa's on vacation right now, so we might not want to bother her, but we'll get these questions to her eventually and come back with updates. So that being said, hopefully you've all gotten a chance to look through the report. Do any of you have any questions with regards to? Yeah.
I did. It was just under, I went through this earlier. It was under the slide number. I don't know. The one that's titled Area Breakdown by Channel. I was just curious to know what the deal/commercial, if that was related to blog shop stuff or what. I've never heard of deals or commercial.
Yeah, so that's relating to like sales or stuff that would be
Okay.
going on. Like, yeah, like
Okay. So, okay, sweet. That's all I have.
Are there any other questions? Okay, I'm not sure since this. Oh, maybe we'll go with Cam first, and then
Hello. Okay, so I know this plan is already in the works, and that's fine. I'm just wondering, and I think this has come up a few times before, are there any plans to expand a bit to Reddit? I know the UWaterloo subreddit is, I think, the biggest university subreddit in the world, and I know there's tens of thousands of people on there. I feel like in the future that might be something worth considering.
yeah, that's. I don't think there are currently any plans in place, but we'll connect back with Melissa to see if that might be an option that we need to look at. So Jay, obviously you were the one who sort of proposed this unfinished business. This is something that we're happy to see come forward if you feel like.
Just a quick question. Like, this is a great. And I thought that, like, it is like if we have a the number for different platform, and surprisingly, I didn't even know we have a Twitter account. So my question is, how are we gonna like pull students to these social medias? How are we gonna continue to increase like students to follow us on Instagram or LinkedIn or YouTube or whatever?
It's a pretty operational question. Sadly, this is not here, but I think that's something we'll have to get back to you on, I guess, when it comes to how we're going to draw students to following these accounts, which obviously I agree is important. That way they're receiving the information. Or if you.
I'll give an example just from my experiences leveraging our accounts and our communication channels, especially now that we have email channels too, but to connect when folks are attending an event, letting them know about other social channels at check-in in our commercial operations. That could be deals associated with engaging with a specific Instagram account as well. So that could be not only through those posts within our channels, but also, hey, if you come in store and you show us that you're a follower of our account, you can get a deal of 10% off. That can be the same for events that people get perks through. And then once we see, and we've experienced this already, of social growth in certain channels, you're also able to leverage those channels to promote your other ones as well, of where specific content can be shared too. So it's almost piggybacking off of things that we're already doing, but centralizing the way that communication is being presented, so that somebody isn't just coming to a special event and engaging that event and leaving. there is an ability to say, tag with us at yourWUSA for Taylor Swift Dance Party. And we had lots of folks taking their photos, tagging on Instagram, and growing our channels that way as well. And so it would be really integrating with our operations to help grow those social networks and then leverage that growth on particular ones to then help others as well.
All right. Are there any other questions?
I have a quick question. Sorry. Okay. So
Go
for the area breakdown by channel section, I just wanted to clarify like what the bold percentage numbers signify. Like it's not always the biggest one that's being bolded, so I just wanted to ask.
It's governance. That's always bolded. Yeah.
The governance one. Wait. So for each area of focus, it's the board and the governance.
It's bolded, yes.
Okay. Okay.
I don't think it's
Specifically because it's under that item about updating on communication between student governance and at-large bodies. So I think that the intent was just to highlight that.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, I do have. So my question is like I saw that we have like a different breakdown by channels, like techniques from LinkedIn or whatever. Are we gonna have like a targeted number of posts or targeted number of videos we're gonna post in the coming years?
In terms of the outcomes,
Yeah, we only have like targeted outcome, but do we have like targeted number of like blogs or posts?
there probably is some further documents that or information that goes up. This is sort of a higher level plan. In terms of the how, I'm assuming that
So we'll have like a more detailed operation.
they would have that operational plan, yes.
And when will we expect that?
I'm not sure that we would normally be sharing operational plans with the board.
Yeah.
I would like to see the plan. If everyone wants to see it as well. Because like this is very high level. And I think it's beneficial for the board to see a detailed operation plan.
Really think about what's the reason for the board seeing the.
I want to-
So what's the operation? What's the strategic question?
I want to see that like they actually follow, like the plan can achieve the goals listed here.
So a consideration would be, and a question that you really want to ask, when will we get a report back on what the trends have been? So you've heard that there are targets, you've heard that you want to increase the number, so it would be appropriate. Probably, I don't know, what's a trending might be either quarterly or semi-annually.
Yes.
Yeah, probably semi-annually. A report back to the group on how you've done in achieving the targets. Rather than the detail of the operational plan, you want to know the impact and the outcomes. So that's I think what your question is.
Yes.
That'd be fine.
Yeah.
I don't know if we have a set date for that report yet, but it will be something that will report eventually.
Yeah. That can be something Suzanne can take away.
Yep.
Hi guys. Thank you for preparing this presentation. I just wanted to ask, did it ever come up in conversations? Like, do we plan to leverage our connection with student societies at all to get out communication to the student body? Often I found that some student societies can have close lines of communication with their faculties, and it might be a good idea to leverage those channels when appropriate.
I'm happy to take that note, and I know that we are. I don't know, Brian, if you have further conversation about that, but then that would be probably in the details that may be in those action and operational plans, Jay, but I don't know, Brian, if you have more to it.
The only thing I would add is that connection and growth and support with societies is something that is on our roadmap, both on the annual plan, but also, I'll say, for many years to come. We're not going to really get to our end point this year. We're just bringing on the society's relations coordinator right now, as we're in the recruitment cycle for them. And so my analogy would be that we're not going to probably be able to build Rome in a year. That once we get those closer ties, closer supports, for societies to have one point of contact as well through the SRC role, I think that will come in time, but also recognizing there is that balance of making sure we don't take on too much right away. But we have in the past, and we will continue to do, to share those key events, whether that may be council meetings to events that a council or a society is putting on, or celebrating wins that they have through social channels. That has been done in the past and will continue to do that in conjunction with our marketing communications team. But from like a full integrated plan, I'll be honest, I don't think we're there yet from true supports with societies, and we're hoping to continue to build that out.
Definitely. Thanks a lot, Brian. That was actually a lot more than I was thinking about, but it's fantastic that the planning is already there for that. Yeah, I was a bit shallower than that, mostly just sort of, I think you already referred to this in like sharing events that we want to promote out to societies and asking them to spread it. But yeah, thanks a lot.
No problems. Thank you.
In 2 weeks. In 2 weeks. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Many. I guess we'll move on to the reports now. So I hope you all got a chance to read through the reports. Start with my report. Does anyone have any questions for me with regards to my report?
No.
Uh-oh.
Oh, what was it? It was involving the co-ag reneg meeting. That was the one that Pam was in as well, right?
Yes.
And that's okay. So then I guess I don't know if I should say that. Same, you were both in the meeting. 2/3 of the needs were met.
That's what you put in the chat after, I think, right? I think they just got back to us today with their official reply.
Okay.
But yes, we did have a meeting last week to sort of discuss the document that was approved. I think that they were sort of very open to the concerns that were brought forward. I think, again, the main concerns on my side of the things were like how is this prevented in the future, making sure that the systems around the communication in the CD council was improved, and I think that was also very well communicated.
Okay.
So I hope going forward that they can maybe better communicate.
And props to Tam as well on there for getting that, helping get that done, and you as well. I was just curious to know like how because it was a lot of stuff we asked for, a good amount of stuff we asked for.
Yeah.
I was curious to know how it was.
I think those main 3 asks were generally well accepted. I think the other ones were maybe the other ones were maybe less so, but
Can't win them all. Okay.
that's how it is.
Did you know reply this afternoon, but haven't had a chance to read it?
The one they sent to us?
Yeah, like 2:55 p.m. So
Yeah, they just sent it.
I haven't had the chance to read it.
No problem. I haven't either, so you're not the only one. Are there any other questions for me with regards to my report? Yes, Cam?
Could you get more into actually, sorry, this is upcoming. What do you know, like the agenda or what specifically you'll be discussing with the SSO?
I believe first year transition and orientation, I think, are the things that are on the agenda.
Okay.
Let me see if I can up the agenda. Yeah, that's mostly it, and then like getting to know you and stuff like that. But is there something in particular that you think we should talk with the SSO about?
Not at the moment. moment, but I think I brought this up in a previous meeting that I don't really feel that students really know what WUSA is, and I really think that getting it in there when they first come in as students and start to settle in during orientation week is it's just a really good place to put a focus.
Yeah, that's something that we can definitely bring up with them.
Someone mentioned at the last 2 board meetings ago about giving them stuff, right? Like about giving them, was it you? Yeah, you mentioned all this, promotion material you've given them.
Yeah, like all the, it'll be the orientation kits, right? And they'll have all the WUSA branded stuff. And I think they're working on still working on those cards that say you're 130,000 owner of WUSA or something like that. So yeah, there are other ways that we can also communicate during orientation to make sure that people are aware of what WUSA is and what WUSA does, and that we'll have to see if the SSO, how we can work together on that. Jeff?
Thanks, Rory. Super quick question. How did the COPS meeting go? And did the Society's MAU get signed by everyone, or was that not, or is that something that's ongoing? I may have misinterpreted the update.
Sorry, so is this relating to the previous COPS? It's there's been 2 COPS meetings since our last.
It says, I'm asking about the August 8th meeting.
So the one that was just yesterday, right?
Yeah.
And you're asking what in particular happened at that meeting, sorry?
Just next to the meeting, you say, hopefully we will have the MOU signed with various societies. I was wondering.
Sorry. Yes, so the MOU wasn't ready for this meeting. So hopefully at the next meeting it'll get signed, but yeah, sorry, no MOU yet.
Gotcha. Thanks. Did the NSTOC WUSA conversation come up at
Yes,
all, or was that something that was dealt with afterwards?
Yes, that conversation at NSTOC WUSA did come up, and I think the direction that they're going now with signing an MOU between WUSA and NSTOC, basically, stipulating the agreement, basically saying how much NSTOC is going to give WUSA. I think that's one of the clean and easy ways to go about it. Maybe for those who aren't aware of the situation, WUSA is the Waterloo Architect Student Association, and so there's what are they called? Architectural engineers, I think. They go to the is it in Kitchener, their campus? Cambridge. They go to the Cambridge campus in the 3rd year for 2 of the 3 semesters, and so there was sort of a mix-up last year, I think, where some of the funding from the engineering went directly to WUSA. So I think we're working on an agreement there to sort of stipulate how much WUSA gets. I'm not sure, Jeff, if you have anything to add to that. I know that you've been involved in those conversations.
Oh, no. I just wanted to hear if there was any changes. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Sounds good. Are there any other questions? Okay. Not seeing any. Move on to which is Katie. Are there any questions for Katie's report?
Sorry, quick flag for everyone, just before we ask questions. The UCRU attachment, just that one was meant to be a report. It's not ready yet, but it's something that I will present at the next board meeting. So I apologize for leaving that on there. The one below that, the pre-budget consultation submission, is correct. And then there was just a minor mistake in the external one where Tanamgan, Waterloo, Conestoga, Laurier, Connect is meant to be its own account.
Sorry. Okay.
I wanted to ask about WUSA. So after the last General Assemblies, there were discussions about, I don't know if Steph updated you on, she probably did before she transitioned out, but there were concerns about the structure of GA and maybe making it 2 weekends instead of one? Has that come up?
That has come up in the bettering working group. So right now we're looking at several different modules and courses partnering with Bettering, which is an organization that can help develop modules that focus on anti-oppression, let's say anti-racism, plain language, as well as delegate preparation. So we actually had a meeting today to talk about delegate preparation when it comes to training delegates and preparing for GA. I'm not on the alternative working group, which actually handles the structure of GA itself, but that comment about the structure of GA was brought up. And although the structure in terms of how many days we are at GA has not changed, they are making some plans to alleviate the stress for authors and allow delegates more time to really review the papers while they're in their editing phase. But I can get you a update on that maybe by the end of this week, if that's something that you're interested in.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. Any other questions for Katie? Many, I guess we can move on to Suzanne's report. Does anyone have any questions for Suzanne? Many. Move on to the director's report. Does anyone have any questions for any of the other directors relating to information presented in the director reports? Okay, not seeing any, I guess we'll move on from there. I move that we enter confidential session, and I have a seconder for that. Katie? Mike, let me know when live stream is paused. No problem. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so just notice the motion, though it's not listed here, I think that the dates for the fall meeting is definitely going to be on the next agenda. So just sort of to be thinking about what Sandra had brought up with regards to whether we think bi-weekly meetings are still working, or if you guys would want to try monthly. That is the only thing I know for sure will be on the agenda. And then next, announcements. So the board evaluation surveys, those were sent to all of you this morning. Please take the time to fill those out. Those are asking questions about how you're finding your time as a part board and the changes, I guess, that can be made to improve your experience and also the experience of running board itself. As well, I will be online for the next board meeting. So I think just for the sake of motion, I might pass things on to Katie to chair the next meeting. Those were all my announcements. Does anyone else have any announcements that they would like to give? I'm not. So I thank you all for coming out, and I call this meeting adjourned at 7:08 p.m. Thank you all for coming out to the meeting today, and we will see you all in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. See you.
Thank you.
Done. All going downhill for next week once we're in.
Motion to